So welcome back to the second session, where the first session was about all the planning and introduction. Then this one here is going to be much more about, playing around with these devices and all this, these goodies that we have up here. Now we will be talking device management. My name is, if I can get this one here to work. There you go. My name is Agerlund. I'm from Cortec Global, born in Copenhagen, but spent most of my time outside Copenhagen. That's the short story. I got a couple of questions after my first session, and one of the questions was around the cloud app discovery. So I mentioned when you have your SaaS applications that we can discover the SaaS applications that we have in our environment. I wrote a blog post on that a while ago. I'll make sure we get all the links, but in this blog post here you'll see how you can download the agent and how you can distribute the agent, install the agent using Active Directory or SCCM or whatever. And then the end result will be information about how many SaaS applications do you have that you currently do not manage, that you currently do not know anything about, because that will be a good way to start. That's a good starting point. Start by managing the apps that you're actually using in your environment. So that should answer that question. So the clicker here is not really working for me. There you go. So first off, we're going to talk about the infrastructure. I'm going to do a single device enrollment because I do believe some of you have already seen that. So just, those of you who haven't seen it, you will just be introduced to it. The device enrollment itself, when you're planning your projects, you should look into the different device enrollment programs that exist. So if you have a lot of Apple iOS devices, you probably want to look into the Apple Device Enrollment Program, the DEP. It's fully supported. I've used that at 2 different customers, and there are still some. There's still a little. There's still a little roads. There's still room for improvements, let's put it like that. Once we have it configured, and configuring it is not really a config manager or an Intune thing. You need to set everything up with Apple. It's going to take a little while, a few mails back and forth and so on. But once you get your devices, then when I start up my device for the very first time, it's actually going to recognize me. It will say, okay, I know that you are from Via Monster or whatever. Can you please just punch in your credentials, and it will automatically enroll me in the right environment. So I don't have to do the company portal and so on and so forth. It works, but there's always a but in a ever-changing world like this. There are a few times where you will see applications not showing up, and sometimes you have to wait and so on and so forth. And I know we have filled in a few bugs on Connect, and I also know for those of you who are using DEP, you have seen the same. They are working on that, which is kind of cool. So when you're doing this, you need to figure out if you want to do, standalone Intune, or if you want to do hybrid. If you have asked me, maybe a year and a half ago when SCCM was introduced to all of this MDM support, then I would have said, you probably want to do your standalone, because in your standalone you have most of the features that you want to have, and it takes a little while for hybrid to catch up. Now, I will say, if you have SCCM in your environment, by all means go hybrid. Go hybrid means you're going to control everything from within, or most things from within SCCM. You have the same support for the various operating systems, which is like the most important thing. There will be features introduced in standalone that might not be available in hybrid, for a short period of time. But with the new dynamic update feature that Wally talked about earlier, or is going to cover tomorrow, we will actually catch up much quicker in the CCM space. And then another reason why I like doing the CCM thing is we have PowerShell. When you have PowerShell, you have the freedom to do almost whatever you want to do. Let's take an example. When I'm enrolling a device, I'm enrolling that device as a personal device. A device owner can be the company, or it can be personal. There is a difference. There is a difference in the inventory that we collect from personal devices. There's also a difference in the application deployment behavior. The neat thing is you can always go in, and say, okay, this device here is no longer personal. It's company. You don't want to do that for 600 devices. I don't know if you want to do that, but I don't want to do it. And that's where PowerShell comes into play. So with PowerShell, we can kind of easily, in quotation marks, discover the personal devices that we have, and then we can change the device ownership. Stuff like that is not yet. I do not know if there will be PowerShell support for Intune. I hope so. That would make perfectly good sense. But it's not yet supported. We can't really do that. So that's one of the reasons why I want to do, or why I recommend the hybrid environment. Another major reason is reporting. The device information that we're going to configure will end up in the same database as your normal SCCM database. So if you're a SQL reporting expert or beginner or whatever, you have your phone MDM information side by side with all your normal personal computer information, your server information, and your manager expects you to give him or her a complete report of everything. So that's another major reason why we want to do this. So PowerShell, we have an existing infrastructure, we know the environment, and we have reporting. That's kind of it. When I look at the lifecycle management for a device like this, then the first thing I have to do is, of course, we need to enroll it. We need to manage it somehow. We want to get the inventory. We want to be able to control it. We want to deploy security policies. We need to know what we have. Once we have done that, then we are going to provision it. We are going to make sure that whoever has this device can actually access the company information that you give them or grant them access to. So, a good example, we had a customer a little while ago. They have a lot of consultants, external consultants. In the past, what they did was they gave them a laptop because they need access to internal resources, right? They need access to printers, they need access to drives where they can store data and so on and so forth. This company here has a lot of external resources. I don't remember, but I think it was around 1,000 or something like that, because they are bringing in guys all the time. Just keeping track of 1,000 laptops that you give to this guy here, and he says he will return, and you trust him because we're all a little bit naive, right? That's a nightmare. So their business reason for moving into Intune was to, instead of do that, just make sure that they enroll their device, and then once they have enrolled the device, the first thing they will get is they will get a certificate. With that certificate, we could give them a Wi-Fi profile. So once they're on the intranet, on the Wi-Fi in here, then we can say, okay, now you can get access to the printers, now you can get access to the other resources. So this one here, the provisioning part, it's super crucial that it happens like that. And that was one of the challenges we had, a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. You enrolled a device, and you were waiting. And you were waiting, and you were like, let's take some coffee. Now, when we enroll a device, I have to be careful what I say, but now normally, within, a few seconds after the device is enrolled, all the user policies will be applied. So you will see mail settings, you will see security settings, you will see compliance settings, you will see apps starting to install, and so on and so forth. And that is pretty important. Then, of course, we want to manage it. We want to detect if something is jailbroken. The reason why we want to detect if something is jailbroken is because when stuff is jailbroken, the device, we do not know how the device behaves any longer. So I mean, I've seen quite a number of rooted Android devices and also jailbroken iOS devices, and they have all sorts of software that we can't control on those ones. What we are going to do with those devices, that's entirely up to management. So it could be that you will just, quarantine the device and connect to the device owner and say, hey, what are you doing? It could be that you want to apply a very restrictive policy on the device. One thing for sure is you want to make sure that they cannot access your company resources. So if you're not compliant with the policies that I deploy, like for instance you're not jailbroken, then I will cut down your access to mail. Because I don't want you to have access to mail, I don't want you to have access to SharePoint if we do not know what kind of device you have. And then of course at the end of the day, we probably want to be able to revoke, to retire, to completely delete the device in here if it's kind of stolen. So that's that. The hybrid requirements. The first one here, the MDM Authority. I just ran into this morning. A colleague of mine was setting up a hybrid environment for a customer, and he couldn't. And he mailed around to the team and he said, hey, have you seen this screenshot before? And it was because the customer already configured Intune. When you configure Intune, it's going to ask you, do you want me to become your MDM authority? And when you say yes, that's it. The same applies if you do it in Configuration Manager. The first thing you do is you configure the MDM authority, and it can only be either SCCM or Intune. If you made that mistake, you have to call Microsoft, and they will fix it. Trust me, you will not be the first one. But I just thought it was worth mentioning here. Then we have the Intune connector. The Intune connector is automatically installed for us when we are working in 15.11, because that's the same connector we're using to send our telemetry data to Microsoft in order for us, to receive information about dynamic updates and what kind of updates are applicable to my environment. We also need a UPN. So, yeah, question?
If a customer set the wrong authority, what is the consequence?
So okay. So the follow-up question here is if a customer, must be a customer, if a customer that I know, if a customer sets the wrong authority, what is the consequence? Well, the consequence is when you try to set up the right authority, you're blocked.
Yeah, I mean for devices already and so on.
Oh, so if you have already... Okay, so the follow-up remark on that one is you have had your Intune running for, let's say, half a year now, you want to migrate it? That's a good question because we have had discussions about that. Unofficially, I'm pretty sure this is not documented anywhere on TechNet. So what you do is you call Microsoft support. Intune support is free, so you call them, and then you tell them what your customer has done and if they can port that. We have had a lot of discussions about that internally. So call them, and they can do a ton of stuff in the background. I'm just guessing, right? I think one of the reasons why they don't document all of that and write it on TechNet is because they don't want to have, you play around with that and then you change your mind and then you go over here. So, yeah. The UPN, that has to be the number one issue when you're setting up your infrastructure. So what you have to do is you register a public domain name. So for instance, mdmhybrid.com, that is my domain name here. You need to have a UPN that actually matches that. And that's in a test environment, that's pretty easy, but in the real world, you have to talk to the directory team. You need to make sure that you actually have that. Often you have to apply a new UPN or something like that. That's again where PowerShell comes in. Then you will have a collection. So you have a collection with your Intune users, with your MDM users, And that collection is very easy to create because you will just say all users with this UPN that I have created, they will just be a part in here. So the neat thing here is, the reason why all of you like SCCM, I'm just guessing now, is because you kind of like to read in log files. And then you go, yeah, but when I have devices like these, I don't have any log files. It's either working or not working. That's not the truth. For an Android device, if you plug in your device with a USB cable here, you will actually get access to 3 different log files. Not only 3 log files, but 3 different log files. So in here you can see, and you can use CM trace, kind of neat. So you can see information about your managed applications. So have we applied any managed application policies? And in that case, which policies are applied? You can see the company portal when it's communicating with the service, so you can see all of that traffic. You can see when you're downloading Wi-Fi profiles and so on and so forth. So it's kind of neat in here. For a Windows Phone, it's not the same. So in here you will install an application called the Field Medic. So just go to the Windows Phone store, search for that. I do believe it's a Microsoft support application, but in there you can go in and configure, hey, I want to grab all of these log files, and then you can export those log files, so you can basically literally just send them from your Windows Phone. And those log files are also human readable. iOS, when you're working with iOS devices, you need to get yourself a Mac. That's it, period. Because there will be stuff like when you're configuring Wi-Fi profiles for iOS, when you're configuring kiosk mode for iOS, you will do that using the Apple configurator. When you want to troubleshoot log files on iOS, you want to get Xcode from the App Store. Once you have done that, then you can connect your iOS device to your Mac, and there you go. Then now you can start reading the log files. And I do know we can also send log information, just by shaking the device and then send it to a mail. But we will get much more detailed information in here, so that can be very useful knowledge to have. With that, let's go in and do a quick tour in here. So we are in. If you've never seen SCCM before, this is a quick tour. It's the UI. The first thing you wanna make sure you have in here is your Intune subscription. When you configure your Intune subscription, and I've already done that, in here you specify. You specify the collection. So this is the collection of resources of users that we are going to synchronize with the Intune service, right? Then you can specify a new feature in here. Let's just get down here. In 15.11, are you only managing on-prem devices? And on-prem devices can only be Windows 10. So it cannot be iOS, it cannot be Android. But we can now have an MDM Authority on-prem, kind of. You still need Intune, and Intune is still in the cloud. But with this, your communication between your clients will all be local. So you don't have to. They won't have to be cloud connected or anything like that. We're going to have a look at that tomorrow when we take a look at the Windows 10 management. Then, as some of you might remember, I can go in here from the first session. We can go in here and say, well, before we want to do anything, I want to enable multi-factor authentication. So when you start enrolling a device, for instance, we want to make sure that we use some kind of MFA. So we'll contact you, we'll call you. You'll have to use the Azure Authenticator, something like that. Trust me, this is the easy part. You will also have to go in and configure platform support. And if you can misconfigure your Android support, you're really good. It's just a check mark. So it's either enabled or disabled. And that's another thing when you're doing your project. I can do a company wipe of a device. Meaning we are going to, from remote, we are going to remove the company information here. So we are just going to, do a select wipe. I can do that on an Android device, but try and define an Android device. I can do it on a NOx Android device. So I can do it on this Samsung here. But if I go down and buy, the cheapest Android device that is not NOx enabled, you have no idea what it's going to do. But for Android NOx managed phones, it is supported. For others, it's not working. That's one of the reasons why I told you in the first session here, you want to have real devices. You don't want to use an emulator because you cannot trust them. For your iOS, you want to make sure that you sign up for the Apple push certificate. And remember, this one here is only valid for a year. So make a note in your calendar a couple of days before, because if this one here expires, you have to re-enroll your devices again. That's it. So what you will see is, you will see a lot of your devices that just become inactive, and you go like, hey, nothing happens. And there you have a very busy week. This is also where you can enable the Apple Device Enrollment Program, the DEP program. There is one more place in the console where you have to create a couple of policies. But the majority of this work is actually between you and Apple. It's not, the work in SCCM is going to take you a few seconds, as a matter of fact. Okay, so I have my Intune subscription. I have my platform support. I do have my collections, and when I pre-created a couple of collections in here. So this is another reason why I like to have it in SCCM. I can go in quickly and create a collection with all my company-owned, my jailbroken devices, my personally owned, and so on and so forth. So this makes it like super easy for me. I can also, see if I can, think I might have it here, a little PowerShell script. So in here, I have a PowerShell script that will go in and detect the personally owned devices. And there is a reason why I want to do that. In our company, we don't have any personally owned devices. We don't even allow you to do that because we want to have a strict policy, and you don't want us to apply a strict policy to your device. So when devices are being enrolled, I want to make sure I know how many personal devices we have, and then I want to automatically change that. The way to do this manually is to go in, find the device, and then in here you change your device ownership, and you can, company or personal, right? It's fun once, might even be fun twice, but then that's it. So this little script here, it's going to detect all the devices I have in that specific collection. So that collection is just a dynamic query. It will just look at, the device ownership attribute and say, okay, these are the personal ones. So so finding a collection in here is going to be easy for you. It did find all my collections. I can see it has done a few things in here. I can also see that it created a report. So if I go into my setup folder here, it just created a report. Notice the time, we are out very late today, 5:43. So here I have it. These are the devices we detected that were personal. We have changed the device ownership, so you don't have to worry about that. And now we can get the hardware information we want, the software information we want, and so on and so forth. Is this something you need? Yeah, it is something you need, in my opinion. I mean, the projects that we have done, this has always been an issue, because we don't get full inventory information if the device is personal. And we don't have anyone in service desk with enough time, to go in and change all of this. So if I if I look in my collections again, my personal devices, once we go in and update the membership in here, this one here should be and refresh it. It should be empty, and they should be not moved, but they should be in here in my my company-owned devices collection. So on my company-owned devices collection, I can start, applying some different policies, or I can find the users and then have a collection with the users and deploy the policies to those users. Another thing, and it's just updating here. I don't know if you can see that. Another thing I have is my my jailbroken devices. Let's say, and I don't have any jailbroken devices up here, but let's just for the fun of it say I have a jailbroken device. Let's go in here. I have a query that will look at the jailbroken attribute. Since I do not have any, I'll just, for the sake of the demo here, go in and add in a device. So I'll add in my newly enrolled iPad. Come on. There you go. So here I have a jailbroken device. The fun question is, how are you going to treat these? And will you ever come across a jailbroken device? Yeah, the first time you have a colleague with a teenage son, I can bet you're going to come across that. So this script, what this script will do is, it will detect all the jailbroken devices, it will find the user, and then it will place the user in a specific collection. So now we can apply a strict security policy to that collection, or we can simply, just call the user and say, hey, don't be too creative. So the jailbroken script here is going to find my my user, and then if I go into my users collection, I have one in here called all jailbroken users, and there you go. Just refresh that one, and if I show the members here, there you go. So we have Tim, who enrolled a device, played around with the device, and apparently didn't play nice. So these are some of the things that we can do with when we have everything, on-prem and hybrid. The enrollment process, if I can just have you switch to, thank you very much. Can I have you switch to the iPhone? There you go. So on the iPhone here, the only thing I have done is I have installed the company portal, and then I'm going to let you in on a little secret. That's the password. Apple has this thing about security. It's something we all want to share. So I'm going to sign into my my portal here. So it timed out. I signed in like a millisecond ago. Let's do it like that. There you go. So on this device here, we don't really have much. I mean, it's not managed, so it's going to go through the device enrollment process. Most of this enrollment process is controlled by the built-in MDM agent and the Apple service. So there is nothing we can do about it. So we're going to create a trust relationship. There you have the multi-factor authentication. So in a few seconds here, it's going to call me, which is pretty annoying because it's going to call me every time we enroll a phone.
Verification system. Your sign-in was successfully verified. Goodbye.
The interesting part here is not the first couple of steps that we are taking, because there is, as I said, there is really nothing we can do about that. The interesting part is how long will it actually take to apply all of the settings. So I'm going to install my management profile, my passcode. But as I said, the interesting part is how long is it going to apply all of the, especially the email profile? Because if I'm a user, I want my email like instantly. That's the reason why I went to the IT department in the first place. While this is all going, if you are curious, you can watch this part of this process here in these two log files. So you have the DPM, oh, you can't see, oh, you can see my screen. You have the that's pretty good job down there, thanks. You have the DPM downloader and the uploader. And if I can just get back to my phone again, then it's done. So the profile is installed. There you go. And there, I don't know if you noticed that, but there it's going to install Adobe Reader. So Adobe Reader is an IPA file that we have created ourselves. It's going to take control of my Twitter. By all means, do that. So it's enrolling almost instantly, and the reason is I have deployed all of these policies to my users. We never ever really deploy anything to the device itself, because that will take a good 5, 10, 15 minutes maybe before you actually get those policies downloaded. iPhone is not activated, has nothing to do with this process. So the next thing is here, you can see, I don't know if you can see the exclamation mark. My compliance check is still going on. The compliance check is going to determine whether or not I will get access to company resources. So when we have conditional access configured for Exchange, it's only if my device is compliant that I can actually go in and get access to my mails. The same applies for SharePoint and some of the other services that we have. It's going to take a few seconds here. And while that's going on in the background, you can see here that it's currently installing. So now I'm in the hands of the Wi-Fi, the public Wi-Fi here, but it is installing. If I go into my mail, I don't know if you noticed, but I had, no mail profile. So the next thing I have to do is just my super secret password here. And then I will get access to my mail. So from here on, I mean, everything is just, like if I normally added in my Exchange profile. So there you go, I have access to my mails right now. So in a few seconds, that's 2 minutes, right? Maybe 2 minutes. I got Adobe Reader. You can see that. I have Twitter is managed. I have my portal in here. I can go in and click on my company apps, and I will be taken to the site where we have the apps. So these apps I see in here, these apps are the apps that are available, meaning I can go in and say, okay, I definitely want to, use Excel. Just go ahead and install my Excel application. Thanks. Just so so the infrastructure part here. The biggest challenge in your infrastructure is not Intune. It's not the connector. It's not the Apple certificates. It's all the stuff that lies ahead of this. Your ADFS, your cloud identity, synchronizing all of that. That was what I kind of addressed in the first session here. The next thing we want to look into is your security and your conditional access. And there are differences in here. If you have Exchange Online, you're good. A user will log on to the mobile device, configure the mail that happened automatically before. It will check, Office 365 will check with Azure, see if the device is enrolled and managed and compliant and all of that. And if not, then I'm going to give them a mail like this. Sorry, Henrik, your device is not compliant with our company policies. And a company policy can be, something that we configure. So we can go in and say we want to have your device have to be encrypted. And that's a challenge for some of the Android devices here. because they're not encrypted by default. So as a user, I will have to go in and encrypt the device, otherwise I will never ever get my mail. Encrypting the device, if it's NOx enabled, super easy. You just plug it into a charger. In the compliance details here, you'll actually get step-by-step information. So the user, even though the user has no idea how to do this encrypted device, they will actually be walked through the process. And we're not doing this because we're evil. We are doing this because we care about our data. Okay. So a few things in when we talk conditional access. And now, by the way, now you can see I have I've had a lot of things going on in the log file here. So I'm pretty sure that the device we just enrolled before, there you go. There was an iPhone, and you can see here that it is enrolled as a personal device. So the PowerShell script is not a one-timer. It's it's over and over and over again. It's just a scripted task in Windows that will run. Okay. My my conditional access. The first thing you probably want to do is you want to go down in your company resource access down here, and then you want to create an email profile. You want to make sure that they have access to Office 365. So I've created an email profile in here. The email profile looks like this. If you have Office 365, this is what you have to put in, period. So when you create the profile, outlook.office365.com, and you're good. Then there might be some synchronization settings that you want to go in and configure, and there might also be this little setting here. Allow emails to be sent from third-party applications. If I have a photo editor, something like that on my iOS device, I have a picture, I want to mail it. Usually, as an Apple user, you can just click mail and then off it goes. Not if you haven't selected this one here. And it takes a little while before you realize that, hey, we didn't think about that. So I didn't do that in my first project. I had a lot of discussions with some very nice girls from marketing, and it turned out that they were right. So that was not the best day, but they were nice. So this is the first thing you will do. In your deployments, what you want to do in here is you want to configure this one and deploy it to your Intune users. So you have a collection called Intune users or O365 users. Never ever a device, because that will just delay the entire process. So I'm creating my email profile. I'm going in on conditional access, and then I select Exchange Online. And when I select Exchange Online here, it's going to take me into Intune. So it will be in Intune that I'm configuring this. This is why I said in the beginning, when you select hybrid, most of your work will be done in here. But for this specific part, you will go into Intune. I've already configured mine. But in Intune, you'll configure it, and then there are a couple of things you have to configure as well. Like I want to enable conditional access. What platforms? Do they have to be domain joined? So on and so forth. Once we have done that, we will quickly realize that even though we are all created equal, there is always someone who are a little more equal than me and you. So when you start doing this, you probably want to make sure you're not hitting, the VIP persons, because if they cannot get access to their mail and they don't care what kind of device they have, they will freak out, and when they freak out, you work overtime, right? Which is also one of the reasons why you want to secure a sponsor. As I mentioned in the first session, you want to have someone all the way up there that can, these are the rules and regulations, and they apply to all of you. But configuring a group in here, members of this group will not be hit by this rule here. So now I have my Exchange Online configured. I do have my email profile deployed. The next thing I have to do is my compliance policy. So my compliance policy is a little like a security policy, except that where security policy is something you apply on a device, then what you will do in here is just go in and have a look at this. When I look at the rules in here, these rules might or might not be applied automatically to the device. So for instance, my require password, that one will be applied. So if I didn't have a strong 6-digit password on this iOS device, it would have prompted me. It would say, hey, can you have an hour to change this? Go in and change it. But if it's like a device is not encrypted, it cannot encrypt my device. It'll just tell me your device is not encrypted. Please go ahead and do so. And if you don't encrypt your device, you know what? We're not going to give you mail. So I'm kind of motivated, and that's the best motivator you have. If you don't enroll your device, there is no mail. Cool. Question? Yeah.
If you have an active sync policy saying that you need to have a digit over, so this one override it if it's stronger or?
So the question is, if we have an active sync policy, will that override this one here? The compliance policies will override the stuff that you have. So if we take your question and take a step further, if you have another security policy in here with another setting, then your compliance policy will be the one that is effective. But when you say that, what I would normally say is that we need to, this is not you going in or me going in and then implementing all of this. This is teamwork. So we don't want to be in a situation we have been in so many times, with domain policies and SCCM policies, and all of a sudden we don't know why we have bits enabled, but we have. And it's the same in here. But these should be the ones that we enforce. Plus another difference here is that you just deploy these. You don't have to put them into a baseline or anything like that. They're just deployed. Okay. Question? Yeah.
Is it if you have a device that's lost or stolen,
Yeah.
is it then a possibility to take the data out of it?
So that's a very good question. If I have a device that is lost or stolen, and you're hitting everything spot on there, you don't care about your device. We could take that device, we don't care. But the data there. So the thing is, if I go in.
All photos of my first phone are there.
Hmm?
All photos of my first phone are on that device.
Yeah. So we can go in and then we can on our devices, I can go in and do a remote wipe on that specific device. So if I have my iPhone here, I can go in and do a remote wipe action. Oops, sorry, that's not what I want to do. I want to retire. You want to retire it. So you're just going to do a retire or wipe, and this is your concern. So can I wipe the content, company content, and retire it, remove it from Configuration Manager, or do you want to? Probably, if it's lost or stolen, you probably want to wipe the entire mobile device. But the thing is here, we still rely on the device to somehow be able to connect to the Apple service or the Intune service or the Android service, right? So if it doesn't connect there, and I've seen some spooky videos where you can unlock an iOS device. There's this little utility software program that you can download, and it will just try and try and try. And I know iOS will say, okay, I will lock you out now, lock you out, but it will. Yeah. But the answer is yes. But we still don't control the device, and we can. If you want to see how that works, we can definitely do that. Uh, so I will wipe the mobile device, and then I will retire it from Configuration Manager. I just want to make sure it's the right one. Click OK there. A long message when you do it. Are you sure you want to wipe this mobile device? Absolutely. Can I just have you plug back this one here? So what this one will do is it will actually send a push notification to the Apple service and say, hey, can you please go ahead and poke this one here and ask it to check in. So there you go. So it checks in, and then now this device is no longer part of my demo, by the way, because it's completely. This is why you want to do this at the final demo, right? Well, there you go. This is no longer interesting. So yeah, the answer to that one is definitely yes. We don't have a timer here, so I have no idea of the time. 15? Oh, gee. Okay. So we still have 15 minutes more to go. So that was the conditional access. Then we have application management, and application management is a question about creating apps, making the apps available. Just like I had my Adobe Reader installed like instantly. I had my Twitter, which was an app from the store. That one was available. Store apps and access. That's kind of interesting because if I'm an end user, do you want me to use my personal MasterCard to go ahead and buy for the apps that I have to use in my work? Apple have a program called the VPP program, and that one is part of 1601, right, Wally? So that's one of the reasons why, if you're still on 2012, SCCM 2012, you want to get rid of that version as quickly as possible, do your in-place upgrade, and get to a current branch, because you are going to see a lot of new versions coming out with a much higher or more frequently cadence. We also want to manage some applications. And by managing applications, what I really mean is I want to be able to control the data within an app. So I want to make sure that, hey, when I send you something, and you open up that file, you can't copy and paste and print. You can read it. It's for your eyes only. Maybe you can't even forward that. Remember, those of you who attended the first session, I had Azure Rights Management. I have that enabled here, and that's not really part of Intune, but it's still kind of the same. So if I go in and say, well, I have this super interesting document here that I want to share, then then I click the right button. When I click the right button, I can protect my document here, and I can share this document to some of my colleagues. So if I go ahead and share this with Peter, I can go in and say, Peter, by all means, this document is for you. I only want you to be able to view it, and that's it. And by the way, I will expire this document not in May. I will expire it March 2. And I will also allow myself to revoke access to the document instantly. So this is kind of what I talked about when we defined the data ecosystem in the beginning. I mean, I love the fact that we are so focused on getting BitLocker enabled, because we don't want, and encrypt our devices. We don't want anyone to come in and steal our documents. But the same second you mail them, you just lost control there. You're just like, I don't even care about control. But that's what you did, right? So off it goes. I'm going to send Peter the document, and then I want to track the document, where is it living, and so on and so forth. So I did this a little earlier today. I sent a document to some of my colleagues, and you can see some of them forwarded it to someone else. So I can see, hey, this guy actually tried to open it up and was denied access. So every time I will actually get a mail here. Let me just go in and see what that looks like. There you go. So in here I have information about that specific document. I can see how many views we have had, how many denies, how many hours since last activity. And if I go in here, this is a great dashboard. I'll actually be able to see who read the document. I'll also be able to see a timeline. So and that's interesting. When you have a document, you go like, why are you saying that? I mean, that's like 2-year-old information. Then you can see on the timeline here that no one has accessed the document, and then all of a sudden it spikes. So you can see 10, 14, 20 people have been reading this. And I can also get a map, which is kind of interesting. So how many read the information in here? Where are they located? So I have some in Norway, some in Copenhagen, some down in Belgium, and so on and so forth. So this is interesting, because this is how I can control part of my data, the data that I don't have on my own device. And these are all the guys, the bad guys that try to open up the document, but I didn't grant them access. And I can revoke access here. I can say, well, no longer are we going to make sure that no one can read the document. And we have the encryption in the document. So we don't have it on our solid state drive or anywhere else. It is the encryption. When you send the document, when you send the file, will follow the file. There is an app. So if I open up the document on my mobile phone here, it will still be encrypted. Okay, so in Configuration Manager, of course, we want to create applications. And if you already are familiar with the app model, create managed applications is easy. You have PowerShell support. So if you're worried about PowerShell, you can create it in there. What I've been doing in here, see if I have that somewhere. I have it right here. I have an Excel spreadsheet. In this Excel spreadsheet, you'll see I have the applications that I'm worried about. I have a deployment type name. I have an icon location. I have an icon file. I have Android location. This is where you'll find it in the Android store, in the iOS store. Do we want to create a deployment? And what is the deployment purpose? Well, the deployment purpose can be either required or available. This is all common SCCM information. The cool thing about doing this is I'll just export this to a CSV file, and then in my SCCM environment, I have this PowerShell script that will go in and read from, and that's not the PowerShell script. Let's just see it here. There you go. It will read from my CSV file. So I have my CSV file here in this location, and then I've placed my icons in C:temp. And when I run this, it will create some of them. Some of them will say, hey, they're already created, and that's just because I've been playing around. But the thing is, all the tedious work in here can be automated. And especially when you're a consultant, you go on location, you do the same again and again and again and again. And we don't want to worry about, and we don't want to focus our time on creating apps. That part should just be fully automated. So, so right now, I am creating a ton of different applications in here. And if I look at, for instance, my Excel application and look at my deployment types, oh, that one is not created yet. It's still going on. Come on. So here I have one of them. They will all be, it takes like 5-10 minutes, then you have all the apps that you need. But you'll see here I have my deployment type is the Google Player. So this is just a normal app from the store. I mentioned that I do want to manage the data and the user behavior in the apps. So what I can do in 2012 R2 is P1, I believe it is, and of course also in the current branches, I can go in and create an application management policy. This is what we call managed applications. So I will go in and I will say, well, I have a sales team, and I know that that members of that sales teams are using iOS devices. So I want to go in and create a policy, a general iOS policy that will determine what they can do when they open up a specific app. So remember, my main concern in here is the data. So can they go ahead and save the data? Can they copy and paste information between this application and another application? And this is, I mean, this is super easy to configure, but discussing this with your customer internally, that's where you will find all the time, because do we want to do this? Do we want to do that? And then, of course, all the testing in here. So I'm configuring my policy. Once I have configuring my policy, then I match that specific policy with my application when I'm creating my deployment. So for instance, I have an AV player here. Let me see if I got any deployment types. That was the one where I had my deployment type, yeah. If I look at my deployment in here, so the deployment is where I make it available to my users. You will see in here in application management that I have associated this deployment type with this specific policy. So when I deploy this app, I mean, this is what you can do. There is a lot of planning involved in this. The technical side, fairly easy. And when you start testing all of this, you wanna have a look at some of the log files. Remember that I mentioned you can go in and check your log files. So this is a log file from one of my Android devices. So in here I can easily read, even though we have a ton of text, that okay, Henrik, the user Henrik, applied something. We can see here we have a managed browser. A managed browser can also, we have some IE or some internet browsers here where we can say you can only browse these websites or you can't browse those websites. So we can lock down the device completely. So you can see here if they're being applied or not, the different policies. I find this super interesting because there is a ton of stuff in here that we can discuss, that we need to change, because I don't believe anyone has managed applications as of today. Another thing you also want to look into is how you can go ahead and say, well, we also have some non-compliant applications. So we do have some applications we simply don't want to see in our environment. So even though you have access to a store, I don't want you I don't want you to go in and install these apps. So I can create a CI, a configuration item. I can specify those rules here. You're unable to install these. If you have a Windows phone, you already installed it, then we can go ahead and block that. So it will just show you a nice message saying, sorry, no can do. Do I still have, I guess the 15 minutes there, almost gone. 2 more minutes? Okay. The next thing, that was the demo, resource access. Resource access the most interesting part in here is not the VPN. That's not what I've found, because VPN, we can configure it, and that's it. But it's the Wi-Fi stuff. When you configure Wi-Fi, if you have a certificate-based, Wi-Fi, then you need NDES. NDES is not something we can cover in here. It will take like 2 sessions alone to do that. I'll make sure I get you some blog posts. But if you have a Wi-Fi with a pre-shared key, funny enough, then I have half of our customers have a pre-shared key, like the secret here. Then if you have an iOS device, do the Apple configurator. So once you have the Apple configurator, you can go in there and create your Wi-Fi profile. You can add in your password. You will get a config file. You can import it directly. If you have Android, go to Jonathan's blog here. Jonathan, his blog, he will help you create the XML file that you need. So in here, you simply punch in your SSID and then your password. Once you've done that, it will create the XML file. That XML file, you copy to SCCM, and see if I have that non-compliant. Otherwise, we can just quickly create that. So So you go in, you create a new CI, you create a CI for an Android or a Samsung, and in this CI you configure your own CI. So now you need to know a little about OMA URI. The cool thing is that is documented. So what I can do in here is I can specify my Android, yada yada yada. It is a OMA URI setting. The data type is a string. This is the value, or this is the key. Once I have done that, I'll just go in. I completely forgot what I called it. So let's see if I have something in here called Android. Yeah, oh, there you are. AND, there you are. So a naming convention, super good idea, but only if you can spell. So what you do in here is you paste in the XML file, and then you have your Wi-Fi. Pretty neat. I think I'm left with 30 more seconds. So for your Windows Phone, what you want to do is you want to create an XML file, and what you do is you just go to a Windows 10 machine. You say, well, give me a list of my Wi-Fi profiles that I have. So you have manually created the Wi-Fi profile. So you use your NetShell VLAN. Once you have done that, you export your profile, and you will get it in an XML file, clear text. Boom, that's it. So when I do this, I'll get an XML file in my temp folder. There you are. I'm not going to show you this one because it has and it's being recorded, and I'm a nice guy. But here you have your XML file. So you can see here you have your pre-shared key, hello Nick, and so on and so forth. So this one you just take and you import. So now you have a pre-shared key for your iOS, your Android, and your Windows Phone. Cool. The 1 minute is up. What's next? As I mentioned in the first session, me and a good friend of mine, Peter Dahlmans, we have a book being released very shortly. That's this one here. It will take you through how you set up your EMS environment. POC, it will take you through Intune standalone. It will take you through hybrid. It will take you through NDES and a ton of the stuff that we absolutely didn't have time to go through here. And then there is a new book here from Jeff Gilbert and some of his friends at Microsoft. This one was just released today or maybe yesterday, but it is available in the Kindle store. And if you only have budget for one, then I don't have to tell you which one you have to select, right? So thanks for coming. I'll stick around if you have any questions. And have a good day tomorrow and a good night tonight.